Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes so we can have people join. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to give it another minute or two before we get started. I'm just going to give it one more minute and then we'll get going. Thanks for joining us today. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Kate Slevin, Executive Vice President of Regional Plan Association. Thank you all so much for joining us today and for taking an hour of your time to learn more about our priorities this year. In case you don't know us well, RPA is a nonprofit organization that works to improve quality of life for everyone in the New York City metropolitan area through research, advocacy, and urban planning. And we can move to the next slide, please. We promote and help to implement ideas to improve transportation options, provide access to stable housing and safe communities, decarbonize our economy, and ensure that we are resilient and prepared for the challenges of climate change. Next slide, please. Next slide. RPA has a staff of about 30 with urban planners, research advocates, designers, and communications and development professionals, and an active and engaged board of directors who support our work. We all share a dedication to our region and for making it a more inclusive place. And Vanessa Barrios, our DEI director, will be talking a bit more about our values of health, equity, sustainability, and prosperity for all during the Q&A. Today, you'll be hearing from our state leads, who are the on-the-ground members of our team. They work with a variety of coalitions and advocate for our mission, and they work with elected and agency leaders to ensure our goals are advanced. They are backed up by our central staff at RPA, especially our research leads and their excellent teams. Rachel Weinberger, Director of Research Strategy, and Peter Herman, Chair for Transportation. Tiffany Ann Taylor, VP for Transportation. Moses Gates, VP of Housing and Community Development, and Rob Freudenberg, VP for Energy and Environment. Over the past year, RPA has been successful in helping to advance a few of our long-term priorities: a congestion pricing program for New York City, a dedicated operating fund for New Jersey Transit, the City of Yes zoning package for New York City and similar reforms in Connecticut, and a better resilience plan as part of the regional Army Corps Harbor and Tributaries study, or the HAT study. And I'm very honored to announce that we'll be hosting the National YIMBYtown Conference in New Haven, Connecticut in September, so please look out for details on that. To open today, I want to talk a little bit about why we choose to work on the topics that we do. Next slide, please. As you can imagine, we are asked to get involved in many issue areas, so we have a criteria for what we work on. So anything we get involved with must significantly advance our 4 core values: equity, health, prosperity for all, and sustainability. It must be in line with the recommendations in the 4th regional plan. And these 61 recommendations were not only meant to be a blueprint for the region, but they were also meant to be sort of a strategic plan for us to advise us on what policies and projects we are going to be advancing over the next few decades. Whatever we promote must lead to long-term region-shaping outcomes. We generally don't get involved in specific projects in one community unless we see them as really advancing a broader mission throughout the region. We try to leverage short-term opportunities and ones that attract support for key partners and decision makers. And anyone who works with us knows we work with a variety of coalitions in many different areas of the region and in many different issue areas. And we also try to fill a need that no organization other than RPA can address as well. So we don't get involved in everything. We really pick and choose what we're going to be engaged in. So moving on to a few of our regional priorities before I pass it to our state leads to go in more detail about what we're going to be doing in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Gateway, Penn Station, and the Port Authority bus terminal. We strongly support the series of investments to improve transit across the Hudson River and throughout the Northeast. This includes the Gateway program, which are 11 projects will essentially modernize failing infrastructure between Newark, New Jersey, and Penn Station, New York. And if you've ever ridden that, you know what we mean. In 2025 specifically, we will continue to ensure construction of the Hudson River Tunnel project advances, and then an environmental review for Penn Station's reconstruction and expansion commences as well. We also support the redevelopment of the Port Authority bus terminal, starting with the construction of the bus storage and staging facility this year. Addressing the housing affordability crisis. We've done a ton of work on this. And you've probably seen some of our reports and media work. The housing crisis is really affecting families across the income spectrum, all across the region, and affecting our global competitiveness and threatening that as well. And Zoe, Malin, and Pete will talk in a few minutes about what work we're advancing at the state and local levels to address this. We're going to be pushing for a transition to a net zero economy by 2050, as all of our states have indicated they're looking to move forward towards. We specifically support investments in clean energy, including the construction of offshore wind facilities and the related transmission and other grid expansion necessary to support that, along with the port infrastructure. And we just put out a big report that Rob and team worked on to talk more about what we need in terms of grid and port infrastructure expansion. Advancing a comprehensive regional resilience plan, and this is specifically related to the Army Corps of Engineers, New York, New Jersey Harbor and Tributaries study. This is really the only comprehensive plan for regional resilience that we have right now. But the current plan, even though we've won some changes this year, is still flawed, and the future of it is uncertain. And finally, the World Cup. Sports, yay! We're all very excited that the FIFA World Cup games, including the final match, are coming to MetLife Stadium in 2026. RPA is working to ensure the event not only runs smoothly, but also supports long-term transit and placemaking investments. And so before we move on, I know that the new presidential administration is really on everyone's mind, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. RPA will keep the strong drumbeat for our priorities in DC this year and throughout the next several years. Some good news for us is that congestion pricing has started and it's legally binding. The Hudson Tunnel funding is secured and the project is advancing. And many of our priorities are really long term, and some have come and gone with political administrations, and we still won them over time. This is why it is so important to have a robust civic community. And I know some of our partner groups are on the call today, and we have much respect and admiration for you all. And we are so lucky to have you all here in this region to work with us and to continue to push for change and really outlive these political cycles, where not everyone is going to always agree with us. Also, I will say, especially when it comes to housing and to a large degree, transportation and environment for that matter, many decisions are made at the local and state level. They are the purviews of governors, mayors, and town leaders, and have really little to do with what is happening in DC. So the opportunity for change really presents itself in 2025. I'm going to pass it on to Malin in a minute, but I wanted to mention one upcoming event you really don't want to miss. Our New Jersey annual reception is on February 26th, honoring former Senator Majority Leader Loretta Weinberg and Kevin O'Toole, Chair of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, in their pivotal role that they've played in advancing the Port Authority bus terminal project. The event is at the New York Museum, which is really worth a visit if you haven't been there. So thank you so much for joining us today and for listening, and we hope you'll stay involved with us. Malin, on to you.
Thanks, Kate, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As mentioned, my name is Malin Mehta, and I'm New York Director here at RPA. We have a lot of priorities and work going on in New York, so it's always a little fun and hard to distill things down into overarching priorities, but I'll try and zip through what we see as some of the biggest things that we need to be focusing on. So for transportation, we think it's critical, as Kate even mentioned a few times, that we continue to focus on congestion pricing. We know what the promises of the program are to reduce traffic congestion, lower air pollution, and generate revenue for transit investments. We think it's critical to closely track these outcomes to ensure that congestion pricing delivers and that the benefits are continuing to outweigh much of the negative attention that has been directed the program's way. Next, we think it's really important to fully fund the MTA and advance the Interborough Express. We are really strongly in favor of the MTA's 2025 to 2029 capital program, which focuses largely on modernizing the existing system with things like signal upgrades and accessibility improvements to make the system overall more reliable. It also includes the Interborough Express, which we have been advocating for decades. The project will connect underserved communities and expand new light rail transit, improving commutes and expanding access to opportunity for hundreds of thousands of residents in Brooklyn and Queens. Reforming decision-making at the New York State Department of Transportation is another top priority of ours. We've been working with partners to advocate that DOT adhere to the state's climate law, and we have also been supporting legislation that would create a vehicle miles traveled reduction target for the state. We would love to see a focus from the agency shift away from expanding highway capacity, and we're working to support more sustainable alternatives for projects like the Cross Bronx Five Bridges and Route 17 to really prioritize reducing car usage and promote more feasible mobility options that align with our climate goals. And finally, in transportation, we think that we really need a new approach to freight. We're involved in on the task force for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, helping to shape the land swap between Port Authority and New York City and shape the future vision for the site. And additionally, we're supporting the Blue Highways Initiative here in the city to help reduce truck traffic pollution. It'll help shift freight movement to waterways, decreasing the environmental impact and improving air quality for our communities around the city. For housing, we've been continuing to research and advocate for better supply side policies to really address our critical housing shortage. First, we support legislation that mandates the collection of comprehensive housing production data and the development of housing action plans. We really think that this would provide a solid foundation of information to really assess housing needs across the state and build a robust statewide framework. We think that having the detailed data can help everyone involved, whether it's advocates, communities, or elected officials, make informed decisions and really help develop more effective legislation to help the state play a role in addressing the housing crisis. Next, we really want to continue encouraging transit-oriented development and other types of sustainable housing efforts. To that end, last year we released our TOD report, Homes on Track, which outlines a tiered approach to TOD that focuses on making sure that localities and station areas are actually ready to implement sound TOD policy. We all want to create more vibrant, walkable communities around transit hubs to enhance accessibility, support sustainable economic development. But really, to do so, we need to make sure that more communities have the tools and resources they need to achieve these outcomes. We're also in favor of expanding the pro-housing community program, which is housed at HCR. We're really keen on seeing this incentive program fund essential community needs as a way of incentivizing more localities to sign up and enact pro-housing policies. We were really glad to see the governor include, a $100 million infrastructure fund to further expand the program. We hope again that it incentivizes more communities to get certified. We'd love to see the program really focus again on sustainable development, either by incentivizing or somehow prioritizing things like TOD, accessory dwelling units, or other types of infill development that could take advantage of transit connections and reduce land loss around the state. And finally, on housing, we're going to continue to support zoning reforms and other reforms to land use processes that'll help streamline housing production. We were very committed with fellow advocates to support the implementation, the passage, and now the implementation of the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity here in the city, and we're supportive of the recently announced City of Yes for Families. These proposals and other proposals that'll come out of, what we expect to come out of the mayor's Charter Reform Commission. We think that they aim to maximize the effectiveness of our zoning regulations and land use processes to really help build new housing across the city. And we hope that the efforts will streamline the development process, reduce barriers to construction, and help meet the growing demand for housing in our city. And I should flag for housing, we run a statewide pro-housing coalition, New York Neighbors. We work with partners at Welcome Home Westchester and Westchester and many groups with the Long Island Housing Coalition. So if anybody on the call is interested in getting involved in the pro-housing work that we're engaged in, please reach out and we're happy to connect you with those groups to get engaged. For energy and environment, we have some ongoing work that we're going to continue to prioritize. As you've all seen, and Kate alluded to this at the top, the Trump administration is working to freeze the offshore wind industry, pending, what they're saying is further review. We're monitoring the impact of this and really hope that it doesn't hurt projects that are already underway. But the executive order does create a lot of uncertainty for a growing industry, one that creates a lot of jobs, improves the economy, and helps us meet our renewable future. So we're going to work to continue to track our progress towards our goal of 100% clean energy by 2040. We're going to continue to support existing projects underway and really work to build buy-in for future projects, assuming that we are on this pause. And we're going to be tracking investments into ports and transmission infrastructure, including further updates to the grid that would help accommodate new energy sources down the line. And of course, the economic angle, building a regional workforce to support the renewable industry. The CLCPA is a landmark legislation that's aimed at addressing climate change and promoting environmental justice across New York, but it still needs more concrete commitment to achieve its intended outcomes. So we're going to continue working with our allies to ensure that the state achieves the targets that are identified in the climate law. And this includes adoption of guidance by agencies on how they plan to adhere to the climate law, both through agency decision-making and hopefully a reallocation of funding to improve communities across the state. And another important effort that we were hoping to see included in the state's priorities this year is the New York Heat Act. The legislation will remove the legal basis and subsidies that are driving the expansion of gas systems. Its passage and implementation should ensure state regulation and oversight of gas utilities provides for reduction and justice mandates as per the climate law, including promoting fair and equitable access to clean energy solutions. And so these are not our only focus areas of the year, but really highlight many of the overarching goals that we'd like to drive our work towards. And then if we go to the next slide, we also have several research projects that are underway that we hope will provide more insights into these and other challenges that New York is continuing to grapple with. So we're on the tail end of research discussing the link between climate and housing. The project with Cornell Atkinson looks at the loss of housing due to climate change across Westchester, New York City, and Long Island, and will identify possible paths forward to support communities, especially those that are at risk. We're also researching ways in which, excuse me, in which we can expand home ownership options for low and moderate income New Yorkers. New York State has the lowest home ownership rate of any state at 54%, with vacancy below 1%. And New York City has the lowest rate among cities over 1 million residents. So, we're really focused on even a conservative limited equity scenario that could provide significant wealth building for middle income families. And we're hoping that this work will help to inform new programs. As part of our Healthy Regions Planning Exchange, we're also investigating how fair and toll policy can advance health equity. And through that work, we'll provide case studies and new research to help support some of those policies. And then lastly on this list, we're continuing to document the benefits of greenways and make the case for improvement and expansion of the network to create safer and more equitable micro-mobility for New Yorkers. We think that this is really important, especially as safety concerns around motorized micromobility actually risks kind of restricting or even reversing a lot of the gains that we've made in new pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Um, so that's our overarching priorities and work currently underway in New York. And with that, I'll pass it on to Zoe Baldwin to talk about our New Jersey priorities.
All right. Thank you so much, Malin, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. Again, my name is Zoe Baldwin. I'm the Vice President for State Programs and the New Jersey Director here at RPA. And so I just want to start by giving some context, right? And so New Jersey had some really good policies advance, in RPA's kind of wheelhouse areas in 2024. We passed the new affordable housing requirements required under the Mount Laurel Doctrine, along with several smaller bills supporting housing construction. We enacted a corporate transit fee that finally dedicates a source of operating revenue to NJ Transit. We reauthorized the Transportation Trust Fund, which is the fund for our transportation capital plan. And we passed the Target Zero bill that compels 13 state agencies and departments to develop a comprehensive roadway safety program. And so looking ahead to 2025, we're really looking to kind of capitalize on this momentum and build on the success that we've had and the fact that these issues are kind of top of mind to a lot of our decision makers. And so starting off in transportation, as mentioned, the state did enact a corporate transit fee, which is fantastic, but the revenues are only statutorily dedicated. And that means that it's still vulnerable to being redirected to other causes. And there's still automatic fare increases every single year that are going to put too much of the funding burden on the backs of riders, especially when compared to NJ Transit's peer agencies. And so as we head into the budget season, our Fund NJ Transit Coalition is going to fight for making sure that the corporate transit fee is allocated as intended. And also, we're going to be working to fight back or reduce the annual 3% fare increases with a special focus on low income and local bus riders. They're disproportionately transit dependent, and 3% a year is a lot. As always, we're going to advocate for smart transit investments. In addition to Gateway, there's two projects in particular I'd like to highlight this morning. Kate mentioned this one at the top, but I'm going to reemphasize it because Port Authority Bus Terminal is one of the most important projects for New Jersey commuters. Bus is the most popular way to get to New York City, but most riders would agree it's a very outdated, crowded terminal that needs to be replaced. And so we're really excited that the project now has all the necessary federal approvals and is ready to go to construction, almost ready to go to construction. And so we're going to keep being vocal supporters of this transformative project. And as Kate mentioned at the top, we hope you can join us in celebrating this milestone on February 26th. We really do assemble an impressive crowd, and we hope to see you there. Another project that we're really looking forward to is actually in the southern part of the state, and that's the Gloucester-Camden line. It's going to provide desperately needed connectivity to South Jersey, and the project had not been making too much advancements in the last couple of years, and that looks like it's starting to change. It would be a really great anchor project to give South Jersey some really meaningful connectivity and transit access. And then finally, for transportation, we're going to be continuing to beat the drum in support of reducing New Jersey's outdated, overly inflated parking requirements, especially around transit. Legislation nearly passed last session, and it seems that there's a growing appetite to tackle issues like this. So we're going to pick that one back up and see what we can get done. Moving on to housing and development, we were very excited to hear Governor Murphy explicitly call for zoning reform in his recent State of the State address. And so again, we're going to leverage that and work to enact some of our top line priorities here. As you know, across the region, we have been really working to get accessory dwelling units legalized in more places. New Jersey's kind of last to get to that goal. And we're hoping we can see some of that move across the finish line this year. One bill that we expect to move relatively soon, actually, which is really exciting, would facilitate the conversions of underutilized commercial space into mixed-use development. It's shorthand for the stranded assets bill. And so think of your sad strip malls is a really good way to look at it. And it would be great, just open up new avenues for housing creation. And then lastly, we'd like to improve the Transit Village program, super successful program, and love to see the state kind of building it up and putting a little bit more resources behind it. So we're working with NJ Transit on that, very excited. And so we also, the draft of the new state development and redevelopment plan was released in December. We're really excited to see that advancing. The current plan is about almost 25 years old, and this is a really important framework that guides smart development in New Jersey. I encourage everyone to take a look at it and submit comments, urge elected officials to make sure it's enacted. And I'd also like to give some kudos to RPA CEO and New Jersey State Planning Chair Tom Wright for his leadership to get this done. Moving down to energy environment. So last but not least, we obviously have more than 2 goals for the state, right? I really wanted to focus on these 2 as really paramount this year, in addition to broader work that we're doing. And so one item that was actually in RPA's 4th regional plan that we would really like to see Governor Murphy add to his legacy is to designate the Meadowlands as a state climate or wildlife preserve. It's one of the most identifiable regions in the state. It serves a critical role in resilience and is one of the largest contiguous tracts of urban space in the entire Northeast. It's also a rare wildland that's accessible by transit to New Jersey's largest cities. And so designating it as a state climate or wildlife preserve would really help the region adapt to climate change and adopt this as not just a preserve and recreational space, but also a tool in resilience. That region is going to be inundated from sea level rise much earlier than other parts of the state. And it would also actually help for kind of creating a sense of place for the World Cup. We're going to have visitors from around the world visiting our region, and it would be really wonderful to have the Meadowlands be a name. Right now, the Meadowlands is actually kind of the region and the business district, but the natural lands are not referred to as such. So hopefully we can get the administration to do that. It would be a really good win. And so moving down to the next one, protecting our state's investment in renewable energy is critical to the region's future. Along with our partners, we're going to continue to champion these projects through research and advocacy, and we're going to work to make sure that they continue on schedule. We need to decarbonize, and this is a really big portion of New Jersey's plan to get there. All right, and so moving on to research. This is kind of just an overview of some of the research that we'd like to advance in New Jersey. The first bullet point is actually underway already, thanks to support from the FM Kirby Foundation. And the rest are projects that we're kind of looking to take up, right? So analyzing how New Jersey is spending its transportation dollars is going to be really important going forward. New Jersey was known as a leader in smart growth and fix it first for a very long time. And we want to make sure that we're keeping up that trajectory and really focusing on active transportation and making sure that we are not widening highways more than we already are. And then the other one I'll call out quickly is the planning for Hudson County. If folks haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to take a look at our Jersey City housing gap analysis that we just released also in December. And we're looking to build off of that because Hudson County is building more housing than anybody else in the region. And we want to make sure that there is a really good balance being struck between how we're asking people to get around, how easy it is to get around in that region, and really tying that to a broader look at both transportation, housing, and then also freight. And so really excited to kind of dig into some of these. I think these would all be fantastic reports and helpful to advancing some of our goals. And so that's it for New Jersey. I'm going to hand it off to our fantastic Connecticut director, Pete Harrison.
Oh, thanks, Zoe. Hey, everybody. My name is Pete Harrison. I'm the Connecticut director here at RPA. And I just want to reiterate what Kate had said at the top of this meeting, that we are really excited that our program, Desegregate Connecticut, is going to be hosting the YIMBYtown 2025 conference this fall in New Haven on September 14th and 16th. It is a big, big deal, national conference for the pro-homes movement. It's previously been held at Boulder, the Bay Area, Austin, and Boston. So it's a really great feather in our cap, and we're really excited to be planning that over the next few months with a lot of partners in Connecticut and New Haven. And we'll certainly have a regional perspective on all of this that we've been talking about today. So keep that in mind. Keep updated for announcements and keynote speakers and all those things. I really hope you'll see a lot of you up in New Haven. Super easy train ride to get up there. So to talk about Connecticut priorities, just like a lot of has been discussed from Malin and Zoe on the energy and environment side, there is a piece of uncertainty around offshore wind, which is a major priority in Connecticut. But unfortunately, I will say even before some of the more recent federal uncertainty, the state of Connecticut had entered into a unique and innovative agreement with Massachusetts and Rhode Island to build and buy a considerable amount of offshore wind. The governor of Connecticut unfortunately pulled out of that agreement in December. The rate payments has been a particularly touchy fight in Connecticut politically. So Connecticut, even before some of the federal uncertainty, has been in a relatively uncertain place on offshore that we'll keep monitoring and keep advocating for. On the transportation side, I'm going to highlight a couple of specific things that we're working on. And really the big one, and folks in the Connecticut committee will be familiar with this, is we think RPA has a significant role to play in improving bus transit service in Connecticut. Certainly, we're better known for our rail connections with Metro North and Amtrak. There is a lot of federal money coming in to build improvements on some bridges along the Northeast corridor. Those are still things that we're involved with and monitoring, but we do think there's a large opportunity for improving the bus network. And just a very quick overview, it's a very balkanized system in Connecticut. There are independent systems, there are state-run systems, and just getting on the bus from Greenwich over to Stamford or to New Haven goes through 7 or 8 different transit districts. So there's a lot of opportunity that we're exploring on that. Nothing legislatively at the moment, but we are working with DOT and other advocates, building a coalition of folks to improve bus ridership across the region in Connecticut. On the housing front, folks will be familiar with our Work, Live, Ride proposal, which is a transit-oriented community bill that we've been working on over the last few years. We were really pleased that it passed the House with 90 votes in a bipartisan vote last session, but ran out of time in the Connecticut short session legislatively. We are coming back. The session has started a couple of weeks ago. Very confident that Work, Live, Ride is mostly intact, going to pass this year. There was strong support in the Senate. Governor Lamont has supported it. We had a great conversation with him last week about it. So we feel that we've done a lot of organizing work on the ground, building up a wide coalition to support it. And this will effectively incentivize communities with bus or rail stations by, if you provide these overlays of transit-oriented community districts, you'll be prioritized for state funding and technical assistance. So on the back end, we're really also building up state capacity in a way that we think will do a lot of good work over the course of the next several years. We were also really excited about the single stair reform that we passed into law very quietly last year. There is a building code commission that will oversee the interpretation of that bill at some point in April, which will be monitoring and likely mobilizing over some resistance from some of the fire community. We are also going to continue advocating for accessory dwelling units, as is a theme across the region. We don't have any major legislative priorities, but really the focus in Connecticut after we passed a pretty significant bill 3 years ago is the implementation of that. And specifically, we're doing a report with LISC that will be coming out at the end of the month on programs to finance the construction and potential affordability of ADUs in Connecticut. So likely we're going to focus more on agency deployment of existing resources to prioritize and popularize that model. And then finally, Connecticut has these mandatory municipal affordable housing plans, and we have been going county by county, reviewing those, working with some local partners and local governments on implementing those plans. We'll kind of sweep through the New Haven County area next, but probably after the legislative session there. Next slide. So in terms of the research that Connecticut is going to be working on, we are really excited. The TOD report that Marcel and the team produced for New Jersey and New York last year, we are expanding that into Connecticut. Really the one big difference between the New Jersey and New York reports and Connecticut is we're going to incorporate bus transit as part of our overall land use advocacy and bus strategy. So that's really going to be the first big announcement that we'll have when that report comes out. It probably in the next month or so. That'll give us some groundwork to figure out where we want to focus on some of the bus infrastructure pieces. So we're going to really continue the TOD expansion and research on that front. We are also, in addition, doing some of the ADU reports with LISC. We are working with DOH on some implementation of the affordable housing plans in Connecticut. We'll continue that work, building up really the local buy-in on more significant zoning changes, in addition to some of the base building organizing work that we're doing with Desegregate Connecticut. And finally, likely at some point over the summer in 2025, with the transportation team, we're going to start exploring a equitable fare policy research project in line with the bus strategy. There are a lot of opportunities and interest in that work. Connecticut has dedicated transit funding historically, as opposed to New Jersey, which just got it recently. The issue has been where that funding has been going, the oversight for local independent systems, and even just modernizing the technology for fair access. So there's a lot of opportunities for RPA to play a significant role in that. So we'll likely have an announcement on a research project after the legislative session ends on June 4th. And with that, I will kick it back over.
All right, thanks, Pete. So hello, my name is Vanessa Barrios. I'm the RPA's Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Initiatives. I play a pivotal role in advancing organizational goals, managing equity-focused projects, and ensuring well-being of everyone who is in our team. So it only made sense for me to coordinate the Q&A portion, considering how this role requires both forward thinking to ensure we're moving in the right direction, as well as incorporating hindsight from the lessons learned in RPA's 102-year history. So let's hop into it. So the first question is regarding transportation in New York. New York State DOT is in retrograde, spending something along the lines of 40% of its TAP funds. Can RPA target cultural change there and pressure the state to generally embrace alternatives to cars?
I can jump in on that one. Thanks, Carter, for the question. Thanks for joining us today. So you'll be very pleased to know RPA is part of a new coalition that's forming, or that has formed. We actually launched last Monday night, called New Yorkers for Transportation Equity, or NIFTY. We are supporting a vehicle miles traveled reduction bill that would call for a 20% less driving over a period of time. And we're just trying to essentially get more investment in transit and cycling and walking, not only in the city, but across the state. We actually are going to be in Albany on February 6th, I believe, right, Malin? So coming up in just a couple weeks, talking to folks about our priorities and just kind of advancing that. I will say that if you look at the state transportation spending overall, federal and state level, it's actually got a very high percentage of spending on transit. So not just looking at TAP funds, but looking at all of the funds. And that's largely big, and it's increased over time. And a big chunk of that is due to congestion pricing, because it's showing up in the state transportation planning documents now as a revenue source. So there's still challenges to be addressed. In the city, we've been pushing for new approaches to the Cross Bronx 5 Bridges project. We've been pushing for a more community-oriented approach to the BQE reconstruction project. And we have been opposed to the widening of Route 17 in Orange and Sullivan counties. So still a lot that needs to be done, but I think that the state's spending on transit and interest in kind of continuing that, we could see some more progress in coming years.
All right.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Well, we're going to stay on you, Kate. So there's a question specifically on congestion pricing, shockingly enough. How can we prepare for a potential attack on congestion pricing from the Trump administration? What advocacy and lobbying efforts exist, and how can we support them?
Well, we have a big coalition that's been supporting congestion pricing called Congestion Pricing Now. And I think right now, look, the program is in place. It's so far been successful in reducing traffic. I think the way people on the call can help is get involved in the coalition if you're interested. There are people who are petitioning against the legal elements and the legal challenges. And also tell your stories. Like, we need stories about how it's been working, what's going on. Every other city where they put this in place, they've tweaked it over time. So we're expecting that will be part of the next couple years here, is to make sure that all of the communities are benefiting from it and no one's seeing any adverse impacts. But tell your stories. Are you seeing higher ridership on NJ Transit? Are you seeing less traffic, coming across the Brooklyn Bridge? Share your stories with us. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to Tiffany Ann, really, and get involved, because we want to have that investment in transit. We want to see less traffic on our streets, and we want to see cleaner air. But we also want a program that works for everyone. Thanks, Vanessa.
I agree. Let's spread the wealth in terms of questions. This is more focused on our New York programs, specifically on the IBX. Are we making any significant progress on the IBX, and are we making it a priority for MTA and the state? And a little bit of the insight on this. In New York, does RPA and MTA have any interest in adding any shields to the subway stations, which was mentioned in the fourth regional plan, which would reduce fatal injuries and improve health?
Malin, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, so on IBX, I think we've been seeing good progress that we're hoping to keep supporting and keeping the momentum up. I think, what we've talked about is how kind of almost universally loved that project is, right? And there's a lot of public support for it. I think the risk is depending on how New York is treated when it comes to the money it needs from the federal government. If there are budget cuts in future years, what does that mean for continuing to push that project forward? The last we heard, there were 3 or 4 years worth of work already funded to keep the project moving forward in terms of design and engineering. But we know that if the public starts losing interest, if support starts to dwindle, then there's a greater chance that sort of it gets kicked out of being a priority. So from our perspective as an outside advocate, we're going to continue supporting it, continue touting its benefits, and making sure everybody pays attention to it.
So moving on to New Jersey. There's a question about the World Cup. So how is RPA involving Sussex and Warren counties in New Jersey? And this question says, we may be way out there, but we're still part of Greater New York, and we may well be ripple effect by the FIFA World Cup next year. What are our thoughts? What are our strategies? Maybe Zoe, you can take this one.
Yeah, so we definitely know you're part of the region. It's a fantastic area and we absolutely appreciate it. But I do want to say that our work on the World Cup so far has not been directly with municipalities. We're really more focused on making sure that the transportation plan is going to be workable and wayfinding will be functional, especially with so many people that aren't going to be as proficient in English. So we're kind of taking that type of approach more on the games themselves. One of the other things that we're doing is actually trying to work with some of the state agencies to prioritize grant making for like placemaking funds for communities that are going to have celebrations. I think you'll probably get some folks that are going to be staying out that way because it is such a beautiful area. But we haven't analyzed exactly what's going on. Happy to talk more if you want to send a note.
All right. I have some really good questions on housing. And this can be answered by any of the state directors or Kate or anyone who's on. How does higher density of housing in New York work with climate change, especially with new folks coming into the region?
Yeah, if I'm understanding the question, is it about higher density in like climate risk areas? I think one thing we're trying to better understand through our work, and Rob can jump in here, but through our work with Cornell Atkinson, looking at the impact of climate change on housing, is really like what are the areas of New York, Westchester, and Long Island that are at risk? What kinds of housing are at risk? And where are we able to build that is, more uh, uh, which areas of the region are actually less at risk and have some capacity to build higher density to accommodate people. I think when we see impact from climate change in other places, people tend to try and move within their local community, within the region. They don't, they want to stay within their networks for jobs and culture and family. And so we want to see areas that have the capacity to build up do so. Obviously, we need funding for infrastructure um, and services and all of that. But I think as climate change becomes more of a reality, we're going to need to see some areas step up to make sure that New Yorkers and people in the region are able to stay here and not forced to be displaced because of it.
All right. There's a couple questions specific to our energy and environment, specifically on offshore wind. There's this question, Trump's pullback of wind affects federal waters from 3 to 200 miles out. Could New York pivot to nearshore wind? That would require confronting NIMBY opposition. Is there any movement there?
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Hi, Rob Freudenberg, our Vice President for Energy and Environment. Thank you all for joining this informative session. It's a great question. It's actually one I kind of woke up thinking about the other day. Does the move to stop offshore wind in federal waters move us back to state waters? I think it's highly unlikely. That's where offshore wind started years ago by looking at state waters, which are much closer to the shore, and was roundly defeated in all the places that was attempted. I will also say that the real touch point for the opposition to offshore wind that in a way has led to this executive order drafted by Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, who represents the shore communities, is the proximity of the wind farms to their homes, which is as little as 9 miles away, 8 to 9 miles away, where you really don't see very much. And so to think that you would come in closer with towers that are hundreds of feet tall is pretty unlikely, particularly given the opposition. I think it would build opposition to offshore wind versus kind of remove it. And I can't picture a governor or their administration taking on that burden. But it is a great question.
Thanks, Rob. Moving on to Connecticut. There's a question focused on asking on any new initiatives and or arguments dealing with home rule, objections to new affordable housing. Pete, can you answer this one?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the question, Alex. Obviously, a lot of our work across the region when it comes to housing does run into local opposition, and there's a wide spectrum of good faith and bad faith concerns that they have. Connecticut's not too different from the rest of the region in that front. Connecticut doesn't have, county governments or a particularly strong state oversight. So there has been this political culture of local control, local planning and zoning commissions and inlet commissions and other pieces. We know housing market works at a regional level, and that's been a deep frustration for the pro-homes movement. What I can say is our approach, I think broadly across the region, all 3 states, has been to push the state to build up more oversight, to more accountability, and also to provide more resources for communities to do so. The idea of just the state wiping away local control and just unfunded mandate for towns to build a certain amount of housing. It's not just politically really unpopular, but it's just not practical. So certainly with Work Live Ride, we're leading with a carrot approach on that, with really the mind to build up state capacity and organize the state to be an easier partner and more attractive partner for local communities to participate with. And then also at the local level, just a base building, winning hearts and minds. There are really a lot of good advocates and partners on the ground and local planning and zoning commissions and on the ground. So we have two different programs for desegregated CT working on that. We have one where we do actual planning and zoning commissioner trainings. We've done 3 of these and probably trained over 300 commissioners representing really all types of communities. And the real thought there is you might be the one pro-homes commissioner in your town, but you're part of a bigger movement that's growing, and giving those folks resources and community has been really popular, and other groups outside of our region are looking to us for that. And then just making the arguments. We've got all the research from RPA and for other places about the benefits of more home construction for the workforce, for our aging population, for our young people. So, we've got, I think, evidence on our side. And if we're putting the resources in place to make some of those good faith concerns easier to manage, we are seeing progress there. So that's, there's not really a one neat trick to do it, but we're doing it on all cylinders, certainly in Connecticut, but increasingly across the region.
Thanks, Pete. I think we have time for another question. All 3 states, and this one's from Barbara Blair, all 3 states have concerns with affordable housing. Does RPA have a role in relooking at AMI, and how could it adequately customize this to the 3 states? I think we might
So that's a
have-
really good question. As far as AMI goes, the general line on AMI was, well, AMI just ends up as a number, and you can adjust that number up and down by just adjusting the AMI. So if you want more affordable housing, you say instead of 80% AMI, we would want 70% or 60% or things like that. I would say it is a little more complicated than that for 2 reasons. The first is that AMI levels vary a lot according to smaller geographies, and HUD has actually had some programs switch to looking at those AMIs by smaller geographies. In areas that are more expensive, the allowances for things like Section 8 go up because of it, and it reflects the higher market and the higher construction costs. The other part is AMI does not adequately account for the growing income inequality. What ends up happening is as richer people get larger and larger incomes and poorer people's incomes stay much more stagnant, the AMI goes up much more than the AMI level goes up much more than poorer folks' incomes go up. And so you're seeing that as a real problem lately. The AMI is kind of skyrocketed because of that, even though low and moderate income folks' purchasing power hasn't kept track. So it is something, I can't say it's something we can do a lot about on the local level. It is almost 100% a federal issue. And I don't know that it's super on the radar of the federal government right now, but it is something, we're aware of the issue. And I think that, we can do a little more exploring of what some possible solutions might be.
Thanks, Moses. We have time for one more question. Looks like this is a good one. What modifications does RPA think needs to be made in the Army Corps of Engineers plan to enhance regional resilience?
I guess I'll take that one. So the Army Corps plan, the Harbor and Tributaries study, is the only regional resilience plan our region has right now, and it's flawed, as you heard in the presentation. Some of the biggest flaws to it are that it really addresses storm surge alone. nearly completely alone. So basically, it's a plan that was developed in response to Superstorm Sandy. We know what Superstorm Sandy came. We know what it did. That was one storm, and this is kind of a reaction to that. Since Sandy, we've had a number of other storms, including Ida, which poured rain down. The plan does nothing for rain flooding, and maybe because it's a coastal plan, more importantly, it does nothing for the combination of rain flooding and coastal storm flooding. So already you have a plan that's built for just one threat when we're facing multiple threats. And on top of that, we're facing sea level rise, which is happening slowly but surely over time. And this plan only factors in sea level rise when it's looking at storm surge. So it only imagines that you're going to have a storm with higher sea level rise versus the kind of everyday occurrence of sea level rise that will cause flooding every day. So there's a lot that doesn't work about the plan that we think it needs to evolve and kind of take into effect, into consideration, particularly the different types of flooding. And then there needs to be a real clear understanding of what this project is proposing. It proposes as high as 20-foot walls along waterfronts like Long Island City, where there's been a tremendous amount of development and a tremendous amount of development because of the connection to the waterfront. So we are faced with the choice that if we want to be protected from flooding, do we want to wall off our waterfront communities from the shore? Or are there other options in there? And I think the way the Army Corps generally goes about these projects is it doesn't give you other options. It's kind of that option, and we want to see other options on the table. So those are just a few of the things that we think could be improved. Cover the multiple hazards, account for sea level rise, and give folks an option for what they want their waterfront to look like.
Thanks, Rob. We're going to squeeze in one more question. Given the ongoing blowback against congestion pricing, shouldn't we be readying a plan B just in case? Could that be greatly increasing conversion of more travel lanes to non-vehicular use, to parking enforcement, more control over hire vehicles and the like? Some actions, what could that look like?
Hi, Paul. Thanks for asking the question. Look, we need all of the changes on the streets along with congestion pricing. There is no real replacement for congestion pricing. Again, it's raising $15 billion for the MTA's capital program. That's a lot of money. And their next capital program is not adequately funded. They still have a $30 billion they need for that one, which started this year. So yeah, there's a lot more the city should be doing. The city has a master plan and about its streets called the Streets Master Plan. It's not meeting those targets. And I know Malin and the New York Committee of RPA is getting engaged in the mayoral race and ensuring that changes to the streets are happening and happening faster. But it is not a replacement for congestion pricing. We kind of need all of that and more to address the transportation problems that we have. Back to you, Vanessa.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you all for joining us today to learn about RPA's priorities for 2025. RPA remains steadfast in our commitment of our core values of health, sustainability, equity, and prosperity. We will keep driving forward through strategic research, our planning, and our advocacy. A recording of this webinar will be posted on rpa.org for those who want to revisit today's discussion or share it with colleagues. Before we conclude, I'd like to remind you of upcoming events. On February 5th, RPA is hosting the Propel New York webinar, which is part of a webinar series called Next Gen Grid, featuring critical projects underway in our region. As mentioned many times in this webinar, February 26th is our New Jersey reception at the New York Museum. And finally, please mark your calendars for the annual RPA Assembly set for April 28th to May 2nd with in-person programming on May 2nd. After this webinar, you will receive a survey. Please take 2 minutes to complete it, and we greatly appreciate your input. A heartfelt thank you to everyone at RPA, our leadership, research, advocacy, finance, communications development team, and this event staff. Your dedication is the foundation of all of our priorities. Thank you again for your participation and your support. Have a wonderful day.